Hey, good evening, everybody. It is time to punch in for the Steelers night shift. I am your host, Joe Morrison. Back last week, I had an unexpected injury pop up on the injury report. Had to miss practice a few days, and unfortunately, went from doubtful to out. But as you can see, Mr. Derek Bell is returning for this week, and he filled in for me last week along with Aaron Becker. So I appreciate you doing that, Mr. Bell. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's good to be back. Quick turnaround, not just for me on the night shift, but for the Steelers, with this Thursday night road game in Cincinnati. So, yeah, it should be interesting. AFC North ball, the Steelers haven't had a lot of luck playing in these road divisional games on Thursday night, but see if we can kind of turn the tide here a little bit.
No, absolutely. And what's funny is this show is actually the first ever, I guess, game day or game night eve show. So
Yeah.
we get to do this right before the game. Haven't done anything like this, so this will be a fun night tonight. And it's funny you mentioned the road divisional games. They're 0-8 since the merger. That includes the AFC Central days. So that is definitely going to be some history that would be made if they can pull off a win. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Oh, I just got a little information here is a YouTube outage. Uh-oh. Well, so
Mm.
if you're on Twitter and you're watching, we'll keep an eye on the feed and see if anything pops up. If there is indeed a YouTube outage. So but yeah, we'll talk Steelers Bengals and kind of see what's on everybody's mind. Mr. Bell, let's talk about the game first. As you know, the Browns made a Browns type move and traded their week one starter, Joe Flacco, who Mike Tomlin absolutely loves in the weirdest, I don't want to face this guy type of way. But what are your thoughts on his comments and I guess this is a trade in general?
Yeah, certainly weird to see a starting quarterback get traded to a division opponent. I think that I can actually see things from both sides here. One, Cleveland wasn't going to play Flacco, so like getting any sort of value for a player that was going to be riding the bench. I understand it from their perspective, especially when you consider that Cleveland's kind of dead in the water right now. I can understand why the Bengals would be trying to like talk themselves into trading for Flacco to see if like you can spark just like a little bit of a fire, trying to maybe keep your head above water until you can get Burrow maybe back in like December or something like that. Ultimately, I think it's just a unique thing. Tomlin's had some, comments, which I think is what you're referencing about Flacco over the years, like keeping Anthony Richardson in the game. Of course, Flacco gets inserted into that Colts game last year, goes down the field, and has a lot of success against them on that day. The Steelers lose in Indianapolis. So, yeah, I mean, I think it makes for some interesting like talking points and conversations. I think another thing is just, Flacco's played against this team a lot. And I think that, he kind of knows where some of the bones are buried with the Steelers scheme. So that type of experience, I'm sure Mike Tomlin would have preferred to avoid, especially with how poor Jake Browning was playing kind of in the moment.
No, absolutely. And I do think I know everybody when we're talking about Joe Flacco is his experience against the Steelers, and definitely, some of the things they like to call defensively, he'll have a hand up on. But I do think, to a degree, making that move for the Bengals also, in a way, helps the Steelers. You saw the Steelers push the pocket a lot against the Browns, and especially with the way they inserted Nick Herbig in that 3 outside linebacker rotation. I really think they're going to have a chance to, not say Flacco's a total sitting duck, but he's
Mhm.
no spring chicken. So he's not gonna be able to run away like Gabriel at least was able to at some times. I think that will favor Pittsburgh a little bit, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the other thing I would say about Flacco, kind of to your point, it seemed like the reasoning was just that since he knew that they had to try something different, like Browning obviously was not playing very well. They've got a lot invested in those receivers who weren't being utilized. I think their thought process is we're going to go get a veteran quarterback at the very least. We're going to try to just absolutely get our best players the ball, even if we got to play buddy ball and that's all we can do. Flacco, one of the things I think that you kind of appreciate about his game is like he's going to get the ball out quick, especially when he knows he needs to, because like those older quarterbacks, like kind of what we've seen with Aaron Rodgers a little bit too, like they don't like getting hit that much. Like those hits, they don't feel very good at 40 years old, right? But you look at some of like the numbers from Flacco, even last week, a 2.35 seconds time to throw. But when the Packers were able to get pressure on him, he didn't have a lot of success. So like that's the other thing is like they didn't have a super high pressure rates because Flacco was getting the ball out quick. He was making good decisions, which again is better than what Browning is going to give you. But at this stage in his career, like Flacco has negative escapability, so it's just something you got to keep an eye on. And the Steelers, I'm sure, are going to be trying to get after that Bengals offensive line.
Absolutely. Now we do have some comments coming in, so I'm wondering if kind of YouTube is like in and out. So the first one is from YouTube, called the NASCAR package. Was all three outside linebackers coming, which is kind of what we were talking about there. But Troy, we appreciate you still shouting that out, NASCAR package. And I mean, yeah, you saw the speed on display, especially from Herbig. I mean, I don't know how you can even think about letting him go in any capacity, whether it's free agency, trading. I mean, dude is since his rookie year, he's just been you go, well, is this his ceiling? No, is this his ceiling? And he just continues to climb. So yeah, yep. I love that package they rolled out.
Yeah, I think that's I just put out a film room on my channel as well about the about just like Nick Herbig's development, and like just kind of started it off like kind of hitting on what you're saying too, is like he was just this ball of traits like coming in. And then, last year I really felt like he grew and grew to the point where he was one of the more like underrated or like hidden gems in the NFL. And then now it's just like this dude's just a flat out star pass rusher. And like some of the versatility and the ways that they're deploying him right now, there's endless possibilities, especially if the Steelers can continue to get those guys healthy and on the field and everybody can be fresh. And I definitely think that, echo what you're saying about just keeping Herbig no matter what. He's got to stay in the rotation because every time he's on the field, like something just feels like it's going to pop. A lot of splash plays just typically happen immediately after. So, yeah, Herbig just playing like out of his mind right now, and Steelers defense trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I feel like his game has grown in this year as well is being able to set the edge in the run game a little bit. How have you seen that on the film room?
Yeah, it was something I finished my film room on. I'll tweet some numbers out after we get off of here. But yeah, the Steelers, they've been fine with Herbig on the field this year. I really feel like as a run defender, he's certainly not on the level of TJ, who's like one of the best in the NFL at his position. And then Highsmith, I think, has always been a really rock solid player as well. But there's just like really lazy narrative out there that like teams exploit him or target him in the run game, and like it's just never really been the case. I think a lot of that is just because of his size and like the lack of length that people think that he gets like pushed around out there. And also like I think even last year, I think he had like one really bad game, which was like the Colts game. And I think in a loss, sometimes like those things can get like exaggerated a little bit. Sometimes players just have bad days, but they're not bad players. And I just think that when you look at the film and you look at the data, it really tells you what you want to see. And it's that he's perfectly fine. Certainly not a liability to the point where like it's going to ever prevent him from being like a full-time player or, prevent him from getting on the field or anything like that. It's just, I think that is just complete nonsense, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And we do have one comment coming in from or X, formerly known as Twitter, Mr. Omar Khan Artist, one of our regulars on here. He says Steelers now on a heater, Steelers night shift, and get to listen to Mr. Fehoko share a good word on the QB class tomorrow, which will be exciting to watch. But while he mentions that, the quarterback class, I know you had one of the guys that you got a lot of flack for, but he is becoming the QB1, Mr. Fernando Mendoza. What are your thoughts on the quarterback draft class in whole, and kind of, share some guys that you think, let's say the Steelers pick at 26. Do you think someone worth taking in the first round at this point will be dropping down there? Or do you think they would definitely need to trade up to get someone that's, I guess, first round worthy?
Yeah, with Braden, I've really enjoyed like interacting with him and him kind of going into like more of like a content creation like media space. I always think that that's really cool to get like perspective of former players, especially guys who have like the personality that he does. In terms of the quarterback class, man, like I think that this narrative out there that's like this is not a good quarterback class is just I think it's crazy compared to like where we were this time last year. We've seen some bad quarterback classes. 2025 wasn't great. The Kenny Pickett year was really, really bad. But this year is not that. Like, I think, it's difficult to tell if all of these guys are going to actually come out and declare. So we don't know who's going to come out because a lot of these guys are underclassmen, still obviously, very much in the developmental phase. But there's lot to be excited about, man. Like, Mendoza's had a really strong season. He's answered the bell the last couple of weeks against some strong competition, ended up winning the game last week against Oregon. Oregon's Dante Moore has been like probably like the biggest, I would call it surprise or stock up guy, maybe in all of college football, regardless of position. Just super poised, calm, can make plays in structure and out of structure. And then some of the other guys too, like, Lenora Sellers, I think everybody just kind of associates him with being this, extremely toolsy guy who's just this moldable ball of clay. The film's been a little bit rocky the past couple of weeks, in my opinion. But again, you don't get 6'4", 6'5" guys with that type of athleticism and arm talent a long time. It's just he's going to be somebody that you're going to have to bring along really slowly. And then speaking of guys like really just coming kind of like from off the mat, Ty Simpson from Alabama, I'm cutting up some stuff for a piece that I'm doing on him right now as well. He's just been absolute nails all season for Bama. He's a fourth-year guy. He's been there just sitting behind other players, but he's been surgical over the middle of the field and operating, with NFL level timing and NFL level concepts. So I've just been really impressed with what he's doing too. So quarterback class trending up. I think you just got to kind of remove some of the names that were, thrown out there this summer that have kind of underwhelmed. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are saying it's going to be. As for the Steelers, probably going to require a trade up though. But this position, you got to get it right if you really want to be a consistent contender year in, year out. You got to get it right at the quarterback position. You got to do whatever it takes to make that happen.
No, absolutely. And I will ask you about one guy that Mr. Omar Khan artist and I love, Carson Beck. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think he's more of a first rounder? Do you think he still has more to prove? Because I feel like he's gone to Miami. He's done what he should be doing. I mean, especially coming from Georgia and that experience there. I personally really like him, and I've seen him mocked to the Steelers a few times, among the other quarterbacks too.
Yep.
But I'm just curious on your thoughts there as well.
Yeah, Beck was a guy that I was pretty high on a couple of years ago. I think a couple of things that I would say is that he is definitely playing better this year. I would also say that I think that his supporting cast and the environment that he's operating within has been much better. I think some of Beck's struggles last year went way beyond like his own issues. Georgia's receiving core wasn't overly talented. He dealt with a lot of drops. They lost a good amount of talent. I think that anytime you lose a guy like Brock Bowers, which is like really where and Lad McConkey, which is where your offense kind of flows through, it has negative effects on your offense as a whole. Now, having said that, Beck didn't play particularly well, and I think one of the things that makes it difficult to evaluate him as a fifth year guy, an older prospect, is two things in particular. Is one, because he's in such a good situation at Miami, they've got arguably the best offensive lineman in the country playing on that line. But with Beck, he's getting the ball out quickly, and that's something that I've always kind of appreciated about his game. But the biggest question, like while he was at Georgia, is like he was just had like an inability to function whenever he was pressured. And in the NFL, you're going to be under pressure on 35-40% of your dropbacks. So if you go in the first round and you play behind a bad offensive line, it might be more than that. Beck this year, he's only been under pressure on 14% of his dropbacks. And he's 7 for 17 for 99 yards and 2 picks, 2 touchdowns. So it's like you're not like what you really want to get questions to. Like we haven't really been able to get those questions, and like Miami's schedule is not really that hard either. So like they're probably going to run the table. So maybe like if we get into some college football playoff games and we can see him in those adverse situations, I would be more interested. The other concern that I would have with Beck is just, to me, the arm, which was like a couple years ago, which what I would have said is like baseline NFL starter level. I think his arm has lost a little bit of like velocity. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get that back or not, but like with that injury to his elbow last year, just really unfortunate for a kid to have to deal with that. But I do think that he raises like I would say he raises the floor to the quarterback class more than anything else. I'm not personally in like the top 50 or like round one range with Beck, but would he be a guy that I would like be interested in like coming in to be like a backup or maybe somebody that you can stash and try to see if there's something in there for a system fit later on in the draft? I would be open to that for sure as of right now.
No, absolutely. No, yeah, that UCL injury. I remember that happened during I think the SEC championship game. Yeah, those are always ever since especially Ben with his elbow injury. You just never know. I mean, when Jake
Yep.
Delhomme tore his in 2007, I was at that game.
Oh wow,
He was
that's
able to get
crazy.
one more good year, and then that was
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah,
um,
medicals will be very, very interesting for Beck among a lot of players, like we see every year. But that'll definitely be something that I think teams are going to look at pretty closely.
no, 100%. And Troy has a couple more comments as well. When we were talking about that outside linebacker package, gave a shout out to Wisconsin, Herbig, TJ, and Benton, all
Yeah,
Badgers. And then he asked the question, with that being said, talking about Herbig's growth and like, how his, it feels like his ceiling grows every year. Well, with that being said, is Highsmith expendable since Herbig is coming on strong? And I feel like we see this a lot on social media. Everyone's picking on just two guys to trade, and I don't see either of them being traded anytime soon. But what are your thoughts?
yeah. I understand the nature of the question for sure. I think it's really difficult because it's not even the fact that Highsmith's regressed or like not a good player. I think there's been some struggles with him like staying healthy. And I think that's been one of the biggest issues and it's allowed for other guys like Herbie to come in and get opportunities to play. And then, TJ's contract being what it is, and they shelled out a historic amount of money for that, even though like he's over 30, like he's going to be around for a long time. He's still playing at a high level too. So it's just difficult to find all those guys snaps. Now I would say make Highsmith expendable. Like, could they just plug Nick Herbig in as a full time starter and be really well off as a pass rush unit and as an overall defense? Yeah. Do I think it's a really nice luxury to have three guys that can rush at a high level and win one on ones? Yeah. It's something that a lot of teams, really, I would say almost every team, does not have the luxury of, really possessing. So it comes down to a numbers game. Herbig will be extension eligible in the offseason, heading into the final year of his rookie contract. Just because you give an extension doesn't mean it'll kick in next year. You can, manipulate the cap hits. It's going to rise, try to make something work. Maybe you can get all three of these guys, together, maybe another year or something like that before you have to make that decision. Maybe you do it in the offseason because Highsmith is still, technically in his prime. There would be teams that are going to be interested in giving up draft capital for that. We just talked about the quarterback conversation. They're going to need ammo to go up and get a quarterback more than likely if the Steelers come away and, whether they win the AFC North or just make the playoffs. If you're going to be picking in the 20s and you got to make a move up, it's going to cost you an additional first round pick. But those second, third, fourth round picks, those add up. You can use that as more ammo. So, we'll make that decision kind of when that has to be made. But I would avoid doing it right now. And I'd be surprised if the Steelers did it right now for multiple reasons, but mainly just because the AFC is wide open. I'm not seriously convinced that the Steelers are contenders just now as like we sit here today. I need to see it against some better competition for sure in a longer time frame. But you look around at the other teams that are really struggling in the AFC conference right now. Everybody's got issues, man. Like the NFC is loaded in comparison, and it just seems wide open. So if you want to give yourself a chance to, end this playoff win drought, might as well push the envelope.
No, absolutely. And Steelers, their schedule does notably get a little more difficult, which is interesting because Ravens, theirs seems to get a little bit easier. So it will definitely be a test. While we're still kind of talking about Highsmith and everything, we do have a comment here. Zat5383 says Highsmith isn't getting traded, and he shouldn't be. We have been waiting for a three outside linebacker package forever. We finally have it. The value of that is more than what we can get for Highsmith, in his opinion. And no, I think for the sake of this year, I think he's absolutely correct. That there is a lot of value to that package this year, especially if it continues to be successful. But like you said, having some ammunition to move up and make some moves in the draft to get your guy is going to be important. And but at the same time, you also make a good point that just because he signs an extension next off season doesn't mean it's going to
Yeah.
hurt him that year. So
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, it is kind of an unfortunate way. It's almost led to some like vitriol on online discussions with Highsmith, and you mentioned kind of the Pat Fryermuth stuff as well. But you know, these players that are good players, but maybe you've got other options like in the room or guys that you want to see more of. It just comes down to like these are the situations that you want to be in, but they aren't always like pleasant discussions, right? Like you want to be in the situation where you have so many good players and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit them all into the salary cap, right? That's how these like good teams, these contending teams, stay contenders. As you develop the bottom end of the roster, you have guys ascending through their rookie contracts to where they can make a lot of money on their second deals. And Nick Herbig he's going to get paid, man. Like you look at like his production, like he's top 15 and like all of the pass rushing metrics right now. You look at sacks, you look at pressures, quick pressures. If you like pass rush win rate, like anything that you want to look at, you just look at the film. Like this dude is a legitimately very good to great pass rusher, and those guys get paid, and people will pay a pretty premium for that. So regardless of what they decide, I mean, it's good to have options. Trust me. Like there's a lot of teams that are going to be in the next couple of weeks in the market for trying to go get a pass rusher because they don't have, the ammo that they feel like they need for a championship run. And I think if there's, we have some questions about the Steelers roster, the pass rushing unit, it isn't one of them.
No, 100%. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the Steelers themselves, you mentioned making those tough decisions, having those tough conversations. I mean, look at what happened in June. I mean, they let Minkah Fitzpatrick go to the Dolphins to get two guys they like, and Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, because they felt like it would benefit their team. And I mean, early on, a lot of people started saying, "Oh, well, they missed Fitzpatrick," but now things are starting to kind of gel in the secondary a little bit, and things are pointing up in that direction. But yeah, no, I think they're absolutely well prepared to make those tough decisions. But I don't think it'll come, in my opinion, at least till next off season. We do have another comment rolling in. Sorry, I'm late to the chat, is what Matt says. If this has been brought up already, what draft capital would you be comfortable with trading for a wide receiver? And as people know on X, formerly known Twitter, Mr. Ricky Scoops made his grand reappearance and then disappeared again. But he said that Jacoby Myers is out there, and Mr. Bell, I know that Myers is one of your guys. If you had to give your top three receivers, though, that you feel like, hey, this is someone that would benefit the Steelers, and here's what I'd be comfortable trading, what do you think that would be roughly?
Man, it's tough. I've been trying to, calculate a list. I mean, some of the names that are getting thrown out there, like, Rashid Shaheed is one for the Saints. He's on the final year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent. Saints have been way more competent than honestly I or very many other people expected them to be this season. But, it's one of those things where would you take a draft asset, knowing you're kind of still in the very early stages of a rebuilding process. Jacoby Myers has always been somebody that I've admired. I've said that for a long time that I felt like he's been one of the more underrated players, or especially at the wide receiver position in the league over the past couple of years. Was really pushing for them to trade for him last year down the stretch before they ended up going with, Mike Williams. Who knows, like, if Myers is even like really on the table. Now it seems like they're willing to listen. In terms of the draft capital, be comfortable trading with, like for me personally, I would not have a issue dealing a third, fourth, fifth round pick, something like that, if I could retain the player longer than just this year. And that's the conversations that you have to have as an organization with a lot of these guys being on the last year of their contracts. What does that look like for us financially? Is this a player that we want to go ahead and extend upon acquiring? There's personality stuff that always goes into that. I know Mike Tomlin's touched on this years and years ago, is that before the Steelers were like major players in free agency, one of the things that he used to talk about was just like, his interaction with guys comes from like the college like circuit. when those guys are coming through the draft cycle, pro day visits, things like that. You just don't know a lot about people's personalities, their fit in the locker room. Now, having said that, like Jacoby's been one of those guys that's been like praised by multiple organizations now for how he handles the locker room. So I'd be interested in doing it. I can also understand the stance that the organization might have, which is like, hey, we're not interested in trading anything but a third, like a day 3 pick, because we know we're going to need the ammo. We got to fix the quarterback position right away. So to me, I'm okay doing it as long as you can keep him. Jacoby is 29, so he's getting up there a little bit in age, but that hasn't really seemed to matter with Pittsburgh. They got the second oldest roster in the league right now. So, that's kind of my stance on it.
No, absolutely. No, and I think I can't say confidently that the Steelers will make a move unless it's just like a deal that they really can't refuse type of, like last year.
It might be an Allen Lazard situation.
Right. Like last year, it felt almost inevitable, like the Steelers are going to do something at some point. But this year, it's like, I don't know, maybe they really believe that Metcalf can do it by himself to a degree. And plus, I mean, Rodgers really likes Calvin Austin too. So that'll be
and
interesting.
They aren't even throwing the ball. They aren't even throwing the ball
right.
very much right now. And it's been a good thing for them. They've been able to keep Rodgers almost on a pitch count over these last 2-3 weeks. You look at his dropback numbers, like he's sitting around like 30, 31, 25 dropbacks. That's pretty good. Like, you can limit the exposure to him. It takes some hits off of him. It takes some throws off his arm, try to keep him fresh and, really ready to roll come the postseason. I think there is going to come a time where, the Steelers offense is going to have to be more explosive. They're going to have to find other ways to kind of push the ball down the field, and having another receiving option would be definitely really good for that, regardless of what type of scheme or system you're running. But again, it just comes down to cost, who's available, what you're willing to give up. And I think what they do specifically at the receiver position will tell us every bit about like how close these guys actually think they are to making a run in the AFC. If it's a move like Lazard, just kind of like more of like, okay, it's a Band-Aid, whatever. If it's, maybe a little bit bigger of a swing like Jacoby or, I've seen other people throw like Chris Olave in there. I don't think that that's realistic, but they go make a bigger move like that, then you could say, all right, like they kind of smell, blood in the water a little bit, kind of going for it. And, I could see both approaches.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we are approaching the final bell. And we appreciate everyone, despite the YouTube outages kind of popping in and out there. It looks like we appreciate everybody tuning in. Mr. Bell, I appreciate you joining us. And for all of us here at Steelers Now, thank you for clocking in tonight. You can find me, Joe Morrison, at Joby Football, Jobey Football. Follow the Steelers Now pages at PGH Steelers Now. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for the morning rush, afternoon rush, and Pelusi's picks on Thursdays. Just before the game, I'll actually be joining Pelusi tomorrow. And Mr. Bell, where can they find you?
Yep, absolutely. At Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. You can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. Wrote an article about how the Steelers offense ended up shutting down Myles Garrett. No sacks, just one pressure. Steelers coming with a big dub. A lot of bragging rights to go along, especially for the fans in the TJ Watt versus Myles Garrett wars. So check out all that stuff. Read the words, listen to the videos. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Job, I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Absolutely. Anytime. And everyone, have a good night. And let's come back next Wednesday, 5-1.
Let's do it.